Every year, Americans spend billions trusting that the honey on their shelf is real. But what if the jar you drizzle onto your morning toast is nothing more than warm syrup wearing a bee's costume? What if the raw, pure, or unfiltered label you rely on is quietly hiding processed imports, stripped pollen, overheated batches, or blends padded with foreign sweeteners? And the most unsettling question, how many families are unknowingly paying premium prices for fake honey while believing they're protecting their health? Recent investigations and lawsuits have exposed a pattern that should stop every older working-class shopper in their tracks. Some brands use filtration so extreme it erases all pollen, the very fingerprint that proves honey is real. Others have been accused of heating it past the point where enzymes survive. A few even face allegations of syrup adulteration so sophisticated that standard testing barely detects it. If the honey aisle can turn deceptive, what else on the shelf is slipping past us? This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. But don't panic. By the end of each section, we'll show you safe, trustworthy alternatives so you know exactly which honey brands still deserve a place in your home. Number 1. Comvita. Honey. It hits like a cold slap when a product dressed up as pure wellness suddenly looks more like a wolf in a beekeeper suit. And that is exactly what older Americans felt when Comvita Honey's recall thundered across national headlines. The company bragged about its Manuka blends as if they were miracle tonics, yet the jars were betrayed by something as basic as a leaking induction seal, a flaw so small it masks a danger so large. It is the kind of flaw that reminds working-class Americans how corporations sell perfection while cutting corners like a butcher with a dull knife. That failing seal invited contamination, spoilage, and the quiet fear that once again the system guarding our food is held together with hope instead of standards. The recall stretched across 7 states, affecting roughly 8,000 units, and federal regulators labeled it Class 2, supposedly reversible harm. But older shoppers know that whenever a corporation tells you the harm is reversible, it usually means, we hope you don't look too closely. No illnesses were reported, but that does not erase the unease. Comvita leaned heavily on the image of purity. Manuka, mushrooms, raw labels glowing like neon halos in health aisles. Yet the packaging failed the simplest rule of all: keep the outside world out. If a premium brand stumbles on step 1, what does that say about the supermarket rows filled with bargain honey, squeezed into plastic bears? And here is where the sting spreads further. For years, honest beekeepers have warned that large importers pump the U.S. market full of adulterated honey syrup disguised as honey. Origins mislabeled, profits prioritized over truth. So when a big player like Comvita slips, it exposes just how flimsy the industry's watchdogs really are. If the top shelf is cracking, the bottom shelf may be collapsing. That is why older consumers must inspect seals, check for crusting or leaks, and match lot numbers carefully. In a world where corporations guard their margins far more fiercely than your health, suspicion becomes the only real shield left between shoppers and a system that treats trust like a disposable wrapper. Number 2. Nature Nates. It is hard not to feel a jolt of irritation when a product that parades itself as pure goodness starts looking like it belongs on the witness stand. And that is exactly the sour note surrounding Nature Nates. Older Americans who have spent their whole lives stretching dollars and trusting labels deserve better than a honey jar that behaves like a politician promising honesty while hiding a stack of paperwork behind its back. Nature Nates once shouted about being 100% raw and unfiltered, yet evidence began surfacing that its honey had been warmed well past the temperature where those natural enzymes, the very thing people pay extra for, start waving goodbye, like workers clocking out before noon. A class action lawsuit claimed the heating reached levels that would make any honest beekeeper cringe, and independent reviews pointed to HMF numbers soaring far above what raw honey should ever show. Some samples clocked in at 232 milligrams per kilogram, a figure so out of line it practically screams, "This honey has been pushed around." And while allegations of added syrups were never proven in court, the mere existence of such findings rattled consumers who thought raw meant untouched, not reheated like a diner pot of day-old coffee. Even though the case was dismissed without a payout, Dismissal is not the same as vindication, especially in a food system where oversight often feels as thin as a plastic grocery bag carrying canned goods. Nature. Nate's leaned heavily on the health halo of raw honey, but the cracks revealed something else entirely. A reminder that marketing buzz can drown out the actual buzz of bees. For older shoppers, the message lands sharply. If a major honey brand can be challenged this deeply, then transparency is no longer a luxury. It is the only shield left between you and whatever corporations decide to bottle next. Number 3. Dutch Gold honey. It is a bitter feeling when something that should taste like comfort ends up tasting like a corporate trick, and Dutch Gold honey delivered exactly that kind of sting. Older Americans who grew up trusting anything labeled buckwheat honey as earthy, honest, and good enough for oatmeal or sore throats were blindsided when allegations surfaced that Dutch Gold's version might be closer to a dressed-up syrup than the real deal. The brand sold its buckwheat line as antioxidant-rich honey pulled straight from mature combs. Yet a major lawsuit claimed the honey was harvested too early and then artificially dried and heated treatment rough enough to make any real beekeeper mutter under their breath like a tired mechanic fed up with cheap replacement parts. Testing did not paint a prettier picture. Samples allegedly showed HMF levels climbing to 95 or even 119 milligrams per kilogram. Numbers so out of bounds they read like a thermostat someone forgot to turn off. International standards cap raw honey around 40 milligrams, so Dutch Gold's numbers rolled in like warning lights blinking on an old Chevy dashboard ignored until something finally breaks. The lawsuit also accused the company of slapping on a True Source certified label, even though the product allegedly failed to meet essential maturity and origin requirements. That is like a house wearing a built-to-code sign while the foundation quietly buckles underneath. While this was not a sickness-triggering recall, the scandal hit a nerve that stretched across the country. American beekeepers had already warned that large packers, including Dutch Gold, were flooding shelves with adulterated imports or immature honey, undermining real U.S. producers who refused to cut corners. Parts of the lawsuit were eventually dismissed, but dismissal does not erase doubt. For older, working-class shoppers who rely on basic truth in food labels, this case lands like an iceberg sighting ahead. If honey can pour like the real thing, yet fail the standards that matter, then trust is melting faster than any syrup added to the mix. Number 4. Barkman honey. Some products don't whisper danger, they sit there pretending to be harmless until the facts hit like an unexpected draft rolling under your front door. Barkman honey became one of those unsettling surprises when evidence suggested that its so-called raw honey might have been warmed far beyond what any true raw product should ever endure. Older Americans who grew up believing raw honey meant straight from the hive suddenly found themselves staring at a jar that behaved more like a marketing prop than a natural food. In 2019, Barkman Honey and its certifier were dragged into a lawsuit accusing them of heating their naked wild Great Lakes raw honey above roughly 105 degrees Fahrenheit, well past the temperature where enzymes begin giving up the fight. Lab tests cited in the complaint revealed HMF values that reach 147 milligrams per kilogram, numbers so inflated they resemble a thermostat stuck in overdrive. Raw honey shouldn't come close to those levels unless heavy processing or overheating happen behind the scenes. What makes this sting sharper is the company's confident advertising. Barkman insisted its honey was warmed just enough to retain enzymes and aroma. But the lawsuit alleged the opposite, that those very enzymes may have been cooked into silence. For older working-class shoppers, that kind of contradiction lands heavily. When a brand promises raw, charges premium prices, and then allegedly treats its honey like a batch of reheated leftovers, trust evaporates faster than steam off a pot. Pieces of the case were dismissed, others pushed forward, but the legal technicalities didn't dissolve the uneasy feeling left behind. Barkman may not be a giant like the global honey packers, yet its stumble reveals a broader warning. The label raw has become a costume that any jar can slip into. For shoppers who remember buying honey before certifications and fancy seals cluttered the packaging, this scandal is a wake-up reminder. If a honey brand cannot plainly state its heating practices, testing results, or sourcing, then the glow of the word raw means little. The safest path now is vigilance, checking processing descriptions, verifying HMF levels, and refusing to accept purity claims that arrive without proof. Number 5. Sunland Trading, Inc. Some scandals don't walk in quietly, they slam the door so hard the kitchen table rattles. And Sunland Trading, Inc. is one of those shocks. This California-based bulk honey importer was pulled into a sweeping lawsuit brought by American beekeepers who claimed the company played a central role in a global honey scheme large enough to tilt the entire market. The complaint alleged that Sunland, along with major packers like Dutch Gold and Barkman, imported suspicious honey, some allegedly syrup-cut, some prematurely processed, and dumped it into the U.S. supply chain while presenting it as legitimate, premium product. For older working-class shoppers, that's like thinking you're buying honest farm eggs only to learn the hens were replaced with cardboard cutouts. The lawsuit goes further, accusing Sunland of participating in a certification pipeline through TrueSource honey that supposedly gave consumers the impression of full traceability. Yet beekeepers argued that millions of pounds of real American honey sat unsold because cheaper, questionable imports sabotaged the market. When hardworking producers can't sell the honey they actually made, that's more than a business issue, it's a system failure that trickles down to every kitchen pantry in the country. While the case hasn't led to hospitalizations or headline-making illnesses, the damage is reputational and deep. When an importer with major influence is accused of manipulating the honey supply, it shakes confidence in every jar on the shelf. Older consumers who grew up believing honey was one of the few foods that could be trusted now face a tougher reality. Any jar lacking clear origin details, independent verification, or honest pricing may be masquerading as something it's not. Sunland's involvement shows that even big players can bend the rules, and when they do, your next spoonful becomes a roll of the dice. Number 6. Lamex Foods. Some corporate scandals don't sneak into the public eye, they crash through it like a loose shopping cart rolling downhill. And Lamex Foods finds itself in exactly that kind of unwelcome spotlight. This major honey importer, long treated as a behind-the-scenes supplier, was swept into a lawsuit accusing multiple companies of funneling adulterated honey into the United States for years. According to beekeepers behind the complaint, Lamex allegedly brought in bulk shipments from countries like India, Vietnam, and Thailand that were suspected of containing syrups or being altered through resin technology processing methods that strip honey of its natural identity the way a bad dye job hides someone's real hair color. The allegations didn't stop at taste or texture. American beekeepers claimed the market was flooded with cheaper imports that undercut genuine U.S. honey by the millions of pounds. For older working-class shoppers who grew up believing that pure meant something, such accusations sting deeply. It feels a bit like ordering a classic American apple pie, only to find out the filling came from a can labeled fruit-ish. When cheap imports push honest producers out of business, the ripple doesn't end at the hive, it lands right in your grocery cart. Even though the lawsuit was dismissed in 2024 due to insufficient shipment-level details, dismissal doesn't wash away suspicion. Industry experts have long admitted that certain adulteration methods easily slip past testing, meaning some 100% pure jars may actually contain significant filler. That should make any careful shopper pause. A brand like Lamex, which supplies store-brand honey across the nation, being named in such a case signals a simple truth. If the supply chain bends, your pantry bends with it. Look for clear origin labeling, beekeeper identification, and third-party testing. If all you find is flowery marketing but no traceability, the jar may be wearing more costume than honey. Number 7. TrueSource honey. Some systems collapse not with a bang, but with a quiet crack. The kind you only hear when you've already poured the honey into your tea. TrueSource. Honey, once marketed as the gold standard of traceability, now sits under a cloud of accusations that make its once comforting seal feel more like decorative wallpaper than a safeguard. Older working-class Americans, who spent decades believing certification seals were a promise, now face an uncomfortable possibility. The watchdog might have been napping. Originally created to reassure consumers that every drop of honey came from a clean, documented supply chain, True Source was supposed to be a shield against adulteration. Yet a lawsuit filed by U.S. beekeepers alleged the program failed to enforce its own rules, allowing questionable honey, some suspected of containing syrups or originating from misdeclared Asian sources, to slip through with the True Source certified emblem intact. It's the food, equivalent of paying for a security guard who waves everyone through while staring at his phone. The stakes go far beyond taste. Domestic beekeepers claim the influx of inexpensive, potentially adulterated honey has choked the market, leaving millions of pounds of genuine U.S. honey unsold. For older shoppers who grew up in an era when a label actually meant something, learning that a certification program might have enabled the very fraud it was built to stop feels like watching the floorboards shift under your feet. Even without a medical recall, the damage runs deep. A certifier that doesn't verify is just decoration, and a seal that guarantees nothing is worse than no seal at all. The safest path is scrutiny. Check origin claims, beekeeper identification, and whether the brand provides independent testing. If the jar flashes a polished logo but hides the details, that shine may come from marketing polish, not honest honey. Number 8. Queen Bee Gardens. Some recalls hit with the subtlety of a falling toolbox, and Queen Bee Gardens found itself in that exact spotlight when its QB whipped honey jars were pulled in July 2025. What's supposed to be one of the gentlest foods you can buy, whipped honey flavored with raspberry, huckleberry, or just pure sweetness, suddenly carried the possibility of stainless steel fragments. For older working-class Americans who still see honey as a trustworthy kitchen staple, the news felt like discovering a loose screw inside your toaster right after breakfast. The recall affected specific lots of the raspberry and pure varieties under lot code 206235 and the huckleberry batch under lot 206305. Though only 265 jars were distributed nationwide, the scope was wide enough that anyone could have unknowingly stored a hazard beside their cereal box. The FDA classified it as a Class 2 recall, serious harm unlikely, but temporary injury possible, especially if a sharp fragment met a tooth or tongue at the wrong angle. No illnesses were confirmed, yet the idea of metal mingling with honey is unsettling on its own. Honey is supposed to be the old-fashioned cure-all every grandparent relied on, not a roulette wheel for your dental work. What stings most is how easily such contamination can hide inside a wholesome-looking jar without a hint of danger on the label. For shoppers who've always assumed honey is the safe item in the cart, this incident reshapes the entire aisle. Check lot numbers, inspect lids, and don't overlook unclear processing information. When a brand like Queen Bee Gardens shows that even small batch honey can slip, it's a reminder that purity isn't a promise, it's something you have to verify before every spoonful. Number 9. Naked Wild Great Lakes Raw Honey. Some products unravel not with a dramatic headline, but with the quiet disappointment that hits you the moment you realize something you trusted may never have been what it claimed. That is the shadow now hanging over Naked Wild Great Lakes Raw Honey, a jar sold with the confidence of 100% pure raw honey, yet pulled into a lawsuit that questioned whether the raw promise ever held true. For older working-class Americans who've leaned on honey as a reliable pantry staple, the revelation feels like learning your sturdy work boots were made with cardboard soles. The 2019 class action lawsuit alleged that the honey had been heated above roughly 105 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature high enough to dismantle the very enzymes that make raw honey valuable. The complaint said the product was marketed as raw and unfiltered, but processing may have altered the qualities consumers paid extra to get. Adding to the unease, True Source Honey certification was called into question, with accusations that it gave its seal without sufficiently ensuring the honey met raw composition standards. The court later dismissed some claims but allowed allegations of consumer fraud to continue, leaving the brand caught between legal arguments and public doubt. And while no health-related recall was issued, the concern isn't just about safety, it's about honesty in labeling, a principle older shoppers grew up believing wasn't optional. For anyone selecting honey in the grocery aisle, this case is a reminder to slow down and inspect what marketers hope you overlook. Look for transparent processing details, independent test results, and clear origin information. When a jar leans heavily on words like raw, pure, and unfiltered, yet offers little proof that shine might come from good design rather than genuine honey. Number 10. Great value. Sometimes the biggest surprises come from the products so familiar you barely think before tossing them into your cart. And that is what makes the controversy over Walmart's Great Value Raw Honey feel so jarring. A store brand is supposed to be the no-frills, dependable choice, yet the 2023 lawsuit filed in Illinois painted a picture of honey that might have been warmed, processed, and sweetened far beyond what any reasonable shopper would expect from something called raw. The complaint claimed that Walmart's raw honey and organic raw honey were heated above roughly 105 degrees Fahrenheit and, in the organic version, allegedly contained added sweeteners. For older working-class Americans who rely on raw honey for its natural enzymes, hearing that those enzymes may have been destroyed feels like discovering the heavy-duty flashlight you bought is powered by flimsy dollar store batteries. The lawsuit even cited testing showing an HMF level of 22 milligrams per kilogram, far above the single-digit range often associated with real raw honey. Though the court dismissed the case in 2024, saying the plaintiff failed to show what a reasonable consumer expects from raw honey, the details still cast a long shadow. If a mainstream retailer's private label can skid into allegations of misrepresentation, it signals that everyday shoppers may be navigating an aisle where clarity is optional. For practical purposes, shoppers should examine whether Great Value's honey discloses its heating, testing, or origin. If the label leans heavily on the word raw, yet provides no specifics, caution is warranted. When store brands, once the last refuge of trust, face accusations of overprocessing and sweetener use, the burden shifts to consumers to look twice before believing the claims. Number 11. Kroger. Some stories don't arrive with shouting, they slip in quietly and unsettle you the moment you realize something familiar might not deserve your trust. That's the unease surrounding Kroger's private selection and simple truth, raw and unfiltered honeys, which were hit with a 2019 lawsuit claiming the products were heated past the point where raw honey keeps its natural enzymes. For shoppers expecting something close to hive fresh purity, the allegations felt like finding out your sturdy front door is made of pressed cardboard. Plaintiffs pointed to elevated HMF levels, a chemical marker that rises when honey is overheated or improperly stored, suggesting Kroger's jars may have lost the qualities raw honey is supposed to protect. No injuries were reported, but for older working-class Americans who have relied on raw honey for its supposed health value, the worry cuts deeper than lab numbers. It questions whether the product you pay extra for is quietly cutting corners. A federal court dismissed the lawsuit in 2020, saying 2 tested bottles weren't enough to prove widespread mislabeling, but the dismissal didn't erase consumer doubt. Instead, it left a lingering lesson. A raw label is only as honest as the company behind it. Before buying Kroger's honey, check whether the jar discloses heating details, floral source, or independent testing. If the label gives you more buzzwords than facts, it may be offering marketing gloss, not genuine raw honey. Number 12. Publix supermarkets. Some products don't trip alarms, they erode confidence slowly, the way a quiet drip under the sink becomes a flooded floor. That's the unease surrounding Publix's house brand honeys, which were pulled into lawsuits beginning in 2012, alleging that their orange blossom and pure clover varieties were ultra-filtered until every speck of pollen vanished. For older working-class shoppers, pollen isn't just trivia, it's the fingerprint that proves a honey's identity. The lawsuits argued that without pollen, there's no way to confirm whether the honey truly came from clover, orange blossoms, or even the country listed on the label. Plaintiffs claimed the ultrafiltration process could hide imported or blended honey, disguised as a premium local product. The accusation wasn't about illness, it was about honesty. A jar that looks wholesome but carries no trace of its botanical origin leaves consumers blindfolded in the aisle. Publix wasn't forced into a major recall, but the legal filings accused the chain of deceptive labeling and unfair trade practices, saying shoppers reasonably expected natural pollen to remain intact. For older consumers who've trusted store brands for decades, The idea that a simple honey jar might mask supply chain shortcuts feels like discovering your fresh-baked loaf was thawed from a freezer truck. The takeaway is practical. If a jar lists a floral source but provides no origin details or processing disclosures, caution is warranted. When pollen is stripped out, transparency often disappears with it. If this truth unsettles you, stay with us, subscribe now, protect your home, and never let hidden risks slip past your table again.
Thank you for watching today's video all the way through. If you found the content helpful, don't forget to click like and subscribe to stay updated to our latest daily videos. Now feel free to check out other feature videos currently shown on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.